StrayAllDay.com.
You are now tuned in to the show where you learn the discipline to show up day after day to do the work, the confidence to put yourself out there boldly and authentically, and the mental toughness to continue showing up, doing the work, putting yourself out there even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. And on top of all this, you get a huge dose of personal initiative. That is the go-getter energy that moves all of us, including yourself. It's going to make things happen instead of waiting for things to happen. And then we put all this together into one bundle, one package, one mindset, one method, one philosophy, one book, one show that is called Work on Your Game. My name is Dre Baldwin, also known as Dre All Day, and welcome to the show. And today's topic, we're going to talk about the third day and how the third day, how it shows itself and what you can do about the third day when you face it, and you will face it in sports. And tomorrow we're going to talk about how this actually works in business. So even if you're not an athlete, you should listen to this one. And tomorrow, even if you're not in business or you don't have a job, you should listen to that one, because the principles that I'm going to talk about in today and tomorrow's episode will apply to everyone. So even if you need to read between the lines on one episode or the other or both, these things will still be useful to you either way. So before I get into talking about why the third day shows up in sports, or even what the third day is, if you don't even have any idea what the hell I'm talking about when I say the third day, let me tell you that I have a text number where you can send me a text message and tell me the best thing you got from today's masterclass. My number is 305-384-6894. You can offer a comment, you can ask me a question. If you have something supplemental that you want to add that maybe I didn't know about, or just something that I said that maybe really resonated with you, let me know through that number. And not only will you be able to engage with me through my text right there, you'll also be receiving my daily motivation text, which I send to everybody who's in my text community. I send that text out every morning, so you'll get my daily motivation text every day. Once you have texted me and then you confirm that you're in, I'll add you on my phone, you add me to yours, and then we go from there. My number is also down below in show notes wherever you are listening to this. Now, just in case you have no idea what the third day is, we're on video right now. I'm holding up a copy of the book, The Third Day, The Decision That Separates the Pros from the Amateurs. This book is my newest book, is my 29th book, at least as of this recording is my newest book. And this book is all about the decision that you make to show up and give your best effort when you least feel like it. In those moments, when you have one of those days in your life, when you have one of those days at work, you have one of those days with your kids, with your significant other, in the sport that you play, in anything you do, we all have those days where we're just not feeling that great. We're not that excited, maybe don't even feel like being there, and there's all these things we got to deal with and we don't really want to deal with them. Everybody knows what that feels like. The third day is those days. Now, the third day is not really about the moment of that thing happening. The third day is the decision that you make when you know it's one of those days. What do you do in that situation? That decision is what makes somebody a professional or makes you not a professional. That's what the third day, the book, is about. That's what the concept is about. So today I'm going to talk about what do you do on the third day when you're playing a sport, because even in the sports world, which from the outside looking in looks like a very glamorous living, and from having been on the inside, listen, it is a great job. I don't think there's a better job in the world than being a professional athlete. Even though now I'm an author, entrepreneur, being a professional athlete was a more fun job than being an entrepreneur. I enjoy being an entrepreneur. I love almost every aspect of it, but being an athlete was a more fun job simply because, for a couple of reasons. Number one, it didn't have as many moving parts. All I had to do was go and play a sport, and it was you're just going off of your physical abilities. Of course, there's some thinking involved, but it's very physical what you're doing. You do kind of have to outsmart people, but it's really about your physical ability. Sports is about your ability to do things physically, period, at its base level. I think everyone can understand that. And the second thing is, a long day in sports is maybe 25% of a long day as an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur, you could work literally the entire day and not be done. In sports, you work maybe 4 hours, and that's pretty much the longest day that you're going to have. So just by the sheer fact that you get as much less time required to have a long day in sports makes it a better job than damn near any other job you could possibly have. Is anybody who has a job that requires less hours of work on a long day than being an athlete? I don't know what that job is. I don't know anything about it. So somebody can alert me, send me a text, and tell me what that job is if you know of one, because I don't know of one. But all that being said, in professional sports, this happens. There's a certain scenario that plays itself out all the time. I already told you about the scenario that if you're playing a sport, for example, you may be in the middle of the season, what we call the dog days of the season. This happens in college sports, it happens in pro sports, even happens in youth sports. There's some days the team just doesn't feel like being at practice. Why? Because the middle of the season, maybe the team is winning, maybe the team is losing, but it's just another day of practice. It's another time going through the same warm-up routine, the same stretches, the same stuff that the coach is saying over and over again. We got to work on the same plays, and everybody's mind is just somewhere else. It's not close enough to the beginning that we're excited about it being new, and it's not close enough to the end that we're excited about, the playoffs or it almost being over. It's just kind of in the middle. It's just one of those days that just blends in with everything else that goes on. We all have these days, and in the sports world, this happens. I remember playing on the youth basketball team when I was like 15 years old, and we had one of these days in practice, and our coach, this guy named Bob, he saw that the team just wasn't really ready to practice, and we weren't really practicing hard. We weren't doing what he wanted us to do with the kind of energy that the coach wanted us to have. And he had like this little box that he would connect to the scoreboard, and the scoreboard would control, like the times and stuff like that. He would put seconds on the clock and make us do suicides and do drills, and he would count with the stats and all that. And he unplugged the box from the scoreboard, and he just took the box and just went in the office and said, "All right, everybody, y'all want to practice? Go home." And he just walked out. And it was in the middle of the season. Again, we were 15 years old. Now, I remember being in high school, the coach saying things like this, man, you can't just be going through the motions. In college, I had days like this, definitely, in college, where I just wasn't practicing the way that the coach wanted me to practice, and the coach would call me out on it, or I would lose playing time because of it. And in the pros, this definitely happens because you're practicing all the time, and some days you just don't feel like being at practice and at the same time, you are required to be at practice because it's your job. So this happens at all levels in sports, and even though my experience was in basketball, I'm sure this happens in football, baseball, track, hockey, even individual sports like things like track and field or golf or tennis. Any of you who plays one of those sports, I know I have some people who are in the equestrian world. I don't even know how else to describe it, who do any kind of horseback riding and things like that. I know some of you are listeners to the show. I'm sure you have days like this. Bowlers, you have days like this. People who play cards for a living, even though I wouldn't put that necessarily in a sports category, you have days like this. We all have these days. So that's one way that you face the third day as an athlete. The other way is that, let's say you're brand new in a sport and it's your first time going through the sport. This is something I see in baseball a lot. And this happens also with football, with quarterbacks in football. Basketball players who are maybe they're just new coming into the league. And what happens the first time that you go through playing against a bunch of other teams in the league, you kind of catch everybody by surprise because people haven't seen you before. They haven't seen the way that you pitch the baseball, or they're not used to the way that you play quarterback in football or the way that you do your moves in basketball. So since you caught everybody off guard, you caught everybody by surprise, you're scoring a whole bunch of points, you're striking everybody out, you're scoring all these touchdowns, and people can't quite figure you out. And everybody's like, oh my God, this player is unbelievable. They're going to be the greatest of all time. Look at their stats in their first 10 games compared to this legend in their first 10 games. Oh, they're on track to be the legend. And they just started. This is the first 10 games they ever played. And everybody's saying these things, right? But then here's what happens. After your first time through and everybody has seen you now at least one time, now the scouting report comes out. And in professional sports, every player, there's a scouting report on you, in case you didn't know. When the scouting report comes out, now here's what they find out. Now everybody knows your tendencies. Now they've seen you once, right? So now everything that you did that surprised them the first time is not going to surprise them the second time. All the things that are your weaknesses, people didn't know what your weaknesses were before because we didn't know who you were. But now we've seen you. Now we know all your weaknesses. Now we know what you do well and what you don't do well. And now we're going to take away all the stuff you do good, or at least we're going to try our best, and we're going to force you to do the stuff that you don't do good. And guess what happens that second time around? Now you're facing that team the second time. Okay, now they're ready for it. Now the Chicago Bears are ready for you. Now the Chicago Bulls are ready for you. Now the Chicago Cubs are ready for you. Why? Because they saw you the first time through. Now it's not so easy anymore. So yes, you are talented, and yes, you're good, but now you realize that since the element of surprise is gone for you, just like it is for everybody else who's been around, now it's going to take more than just surprise in order to win. Now, what else do you have? Do you have anything else? If you don't have anything else, you won't last in the game. And in professional sports, listen, there's a whole graveyard of pro athlete careers of athletes who came through the first time and they surprised everybody because what they were bringing was unique and novel. And once everybody kind of got a feel for what they could do, they didn't have anything else and their careers couldn't last because they didn't have anything else that made them good. So I'm going to tell you here today What strategies can you utilize now that everyone else is strategizing against you? Are there some strategies you can utilize that will still make you good even though you no longer have that element of newness and surprise working in your favor? Is there something you can do? The answer is absolutely yes, and I'm going to tell you what they are here today. Point number one, topic once again, is how do you combat the third day in sports? Number one, execution. What do I mean by execution? In professional sports, as I just mentioned in the introduction, I talked about the concept of scouting reports. All right, scouting report is, let's take an athlete who plays, let's say, basketball. We'll just stick to basketball. It's the one that I know best. So we'll say LeBron James. We know the scouting report on LeBron James. He might be a bad example because he's a pretty complete player, but we'll use LeBron James. We know that LeBron James, when he drives to the basket, he's pretty tough to stop because he's a big, strong guy. He's good at finishing around the basket. He can jump pretty high. He doesn't jump as high as he used to, but he can still jump pretty damn high. He can still dunk on you. We know what he can do. We know what he can't do. We know what his weaknesses are. If we want to force him to something that he does worse, teams know. And the scouting report tells us what the weaknesses and what the strengths are of every single player, every single team in a sport. They do this in every sport, by the way. Football, baseball, basketball, hockey, every team sport they do this. I don't know so much how scouting works in individual sports, but I'm sure it exists in sports like tennis, in sports like, maybe not so much like golf, because there's really no defense in golf. But in sports like tennis, where you can do something to try to affect the opponent, these things exist. Now, in professional team sports, again, I don't know about the individual sports, but in team sports, they have these things called advanced scouts. Now, this is more than just a scouting report. This is more than just saying this guy's a good shooter and this guy, he's a bad ball handler and this guy's not good on defense or this person doesn't grab any rebounds. That's the scouting report. Advanced scouting is what a team does. So, for example, let's say down here in Miami, the Miami Heat. Today they're playing against the Detroit Pistons. And then 2 days from now, they're going to be playing against the New York Knicks. So in the game against the Detroit Pistons, pay attention here, there's a scout who works for the New York Knicks who comes to the game of the Heat against the Pistons. Now, why is it a scout who works for the Knicks coming to a game of the Heat against the Pistons? Because the Knicks are about to play against the Heat in 2 days. So the Knicks scout comes to the Heat game and he's watching everything the Miami Heat does. He's listening to hear what are the play calls that the coach calls out. What's the name of the play? And then what happens when they call that play? The advanced scout is looking and paying attention to how certain players are moving about and how certain players work together and how certain players don't. The advanced scout is noting which players are weak at grabbing rebounds, which players are bad shooters, which players are right now they're making everything that they shoot, and which players are right now on the slump and they're missing everything. The advanced scout wants to find out everything that's going on with the Miami Heat right now today so that when the New York Knicks play against the Miami Heat, the Knicks already know everything the Heat are doing. They know every play you're going to run. They know how those plays work. They know how the players are working together. Because listen, the Heat might have signed a new player 2 weeks ago that wasn't in the scouting report, but now that the advanced scout went to the game and saw them play against the Pistons, now we have a little bit of an idea who that new player is. And all of these things go into the game plan 2 days from now when the Miami Heat now play against the Knicks because that advanced scout told everybody on the Knicks, all right, here's everything the Heat's doing and here's how we stop them. This happens in professional sports. Every team does this. Every team has a group of advanced scouts. Their job, again, is to travel ahead of the team and go see the team that we're about to play against and prepare us for that team so we know everything that they're doing, all their players, what's working for them, what's not working for them, so that we are already ready ahead of time, prepared ahead of time to beat this team. And every team is doing it to each other. So now that you know this, now that you know that every team knows all the tendencies of each player, all the tendencies of each team, what every team is running, the plays that you run, what the play is supposed to do, how to stop it and everything. How the hell does anybody score a basket? How does anybody even have success in team sports professionally if we all know what everybody else is doing? The way that you still succeed anyway is one word. It is called execution. What does execution mean? Execution means that I'm not going to pull a magic trick out of my hat to beat you. Execution means I know that you know exactly what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm still going to be successful at doing it, even though you know exactly what it is, and even though you think you know exactly how to stop it. That's me saying, you know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do it even better than you think you can stop it. I'm going to do my thing better than you do your thing. I know everything you're doing. You know everything I'm doing. I'm just going to do mine better with you trying to stop me than you will be able to do yours with me trying to stop you. That's what execution is about. And I want you all to understand something. at the professional level, when there is competition, everybody knows what everybody else is doing. There are no secrets at the professional level in the sports world. So what allows you to still do your thing is that you execute. Now, how do you execute? I'm going to get into that when we get into point number 2. But this is something that, especially those of you who watch basketball or you play basketball, if you think of a player think of somebody like LeBron James, since we use him as an example. He's actually a good example. Or somebody like Dwayne Wade when he was playing, or Kobe Bryant, or Michael Jordan, or Kevin Durant, James Harden. These players who are star players, especially the superstar guys, understand that every game that they play, everybody in the damn arena knows that LeBron James is the best player. Everybody knows that LeBron is going to get 27 points every single game. Everybody knows Kevin Durant can shoot 3-pointers and that he's going to score 30 points. Everybody knows that. And the other team knows it. And mind you, these are professional players. Kevin Durant might be the best player, but these are professional level players. There's no walk in the park scoring on a pro player, even if you are quote unquote better than that player. Every night, a guy like LeBron is getting the best effort of every player he plays against, every single game. Can you imagine 82 times a year going to work, and you know that the person you're going against is giving their best possible effort to try to have a good game against you and to stop you because you're the biggest target in the gym? There's 20,000 people in there watching. Can you imagine what kind of focus, the level of focus that you have to bring to work every single day when everybody's gunning for you every time you show up? That's what somebody like a Michael Jordan or a LeBron or a Kevin Durant is dealing with every game that they play when they're at their job. Can you imagine living up to that level of scrutiny and still delivering at your best level? Because when you're playing against some random team in the middle of the season and they got some guy that's not even well known like you, that guy's not an all-star, he doesn't have a big contract. What is he thinking playing against you? He's thinking, if I have a good game against him, now I'm going to look like a star. Now I get to elevate myself. Now I get some attention for myself. This could be, even if I don't play good any other game of the season, if I play good in this game, this could be my next contract. This could be something I could brag about back to my friends at home. This is something I could post on my Instagram. And everybody's gunning for you. And you're still expected to have a great game because that's what they're paying you for. That's the level of scrutiny that these guys are dealing with every night. And the reason why LeBron still has a good game and Kevin Durant still has a good game and Michael Jordan is because of execution. There are no secrets to their game. Everybody's watching them. Everybody's breaking their games down. Everybody's making videos about them. People are writing books about them. Everybody knows their game. And you know theirs, at least as best you can. How do you win anyway? By execution. You do your game plan better than they do their game plan. Understand that talent alone is not going to help you win at the professional level in sports. Talent is a requirement to be at the professional level in sports. You have no talent, you won't be a professional in sports. But once you're there, understand you walk into the locker room, everybody in there has talent. All right, there's nobody in the locker room on a pro sports team that does not have talent. If you play an individual sport, you run track, you ride horses, you play tennis, you play golf, everybody in the tournament has talent. So if you think you're going to win just because you're talented, think again. Execution is one thing that you're going to need on top of that talent. Let me tell you the next thing, point number 2. Today's topic, once again, is the third day in sports. How do you combat it and what do you do? The second thing, and this is what I stopped short of saying in point number 1, for a guy like LeBron James, a guy like Michael Jordan, somebody like Serena Williams when she's playing tennis, or who's somebody else that plays tennis? Novak Djokovic when they're playing tennis. Everybody knows who they are. Everybody knows what they're doing. Everybody knows their game, and everybody's trying to beat them because that would be the biggest bullet on somebody's resume is to beat you, Serena. How does she win anyway? Preparation and defeating your opponents in detail. This is the second point. The way you combat the third day in sports is preparation and winning in detail. What does this mean? For an NFL quarterback, for example, first time that quarterback plays against other teams, their rookie year in the league, they may do great because they have this talent and this uniqueness, again, that confounds your opponent. The opponent has never seen your specific combination of skills, so you may catch people by surprise and do great. But then the opponents, they study you, they learn your tendencies, and now they're ready for you next time around. How do you continue to be good, or can you continue to be good? You can't beat them on talent because they have talent too, and now they know your game as well as you knew theirs. So are you willing to do the extra stuff required to win? What are the extra things? Let's look at a position like, again, quarterback in football, which is the most important position in all of team sports is football quarterback, American football quarterback. What do American football quarterbacks have to do? They can't just be talented. You got to dive into the playbook, master the playbook, know every play, and know what every single player on the field is supposed to be doing every play, studying film religiously, and then being over-prepared for every opponent that you face. That's the job of a quarterback in football. And any football quarterback who has talent but is not willing to do this preparation work, they won't last in a pro league. Maybe in college you can get away with it if you're talented enough. Definitely at the high school, the lower amateur levels, but at the pro level, since everybody's talented, unless you're willing to do the prep work, you're not going to make it. This is the biggest thing about, and any of you who plays football or knows anyone who's in the football world, you go confirm this with somebody, or you can confirm it yourself. You play football, you probably know this. You think of athletes who get older, like a Tom Brady or LeBron James as he's older now, Michael Jordan when he was older. How did these guys still win? They weren't winning on talent and athletic ability anymore. Maybe when they first came in, they were good enough to do that. But when they got older, they weren't winning on that. They were winning based on their knowledge of the game. They were winning the game mentally combined with their physical ability. Now, they didn't have the same physical pop that they had before, but they were winning the game because they understood it on a mental level that their opponents weren't on yet. Tom Brady, he's over 40 years old, still winning in football. How is this? Because he has mentally mastered the game. He doesn't have the same tools physically, but he has tools mentally that his opponents don't have. So my question to you, athlete, when you reach the third day, or because the third day will be approaching very soon, are you willing to do the mental work to make up for what you no longer have an advantage with physically? You may just be completely even with everybody physically. So what's going to separate you is your willingness to do the preparation work. And this is how you think how a guy like LeBron has a good game every night, even though every player he plays against is trying to have a game of his career against LeBron because they can say, hey, I beat LeBron. How does he still have a good game anyway? And the guys you're playing against, again, these are not any recreation league bums. These are guys who are professional basketball players. How does LeBron have a good game anyway? Because LeBron has a serious, rigorous preparation system. And any of you ever read anything about LeBron or heard him do interviews or hear his trainers do interviews, they talk about this, the preparation that he does. They say that LeBron James spends $1 million a year on body maintenance, between his trainers, between whatever recovery methods he uses, between his chefs, the people who make food for him, between just taking care of his legs and his overall body and all the things he does to stay in the shape that he stays in. And I don't know LeBron James. I've never seen the receipts for these things that he paid for, but I believe it by looking at his performance. That even though LeBron is a freak of nature, being the size that he is and has the combination of abilities that he has, he ain't the first person to have a combination of abilities similar to what he has, but he's the first person to do what he's done with that combination. And the reason is LeBron's preparation. He's always prepared. And he has to do that every single night. And again, in order to deliver at that level. The only way you can become a star at any profession is when you deliver on a consistent basis. Not delivering when you feel like it or when you get excited about it, but doing it on a consistent basis. That's what LeBron does, and it's because of his preparation and the attention to detail that he pays. And again, without even knowing him, I know that he has to do these things, because there's no other way he could deliver at that level, that consistently, without doing these things. So my question to you, athlete, are you willing to do the prep work to match your physical ability? Point number 3. And oh, by the way, if you don't master the third, if you don't do the prep work to match your physical ability, you will never master the third day. Point number 3. Today's topic, once again, is handling the third day when you play sports. Third thing you got to do is you got to have mental toughness. What is mental toughness? As I say every day, introducing this show, is your willingness to remain disciplined and confident, showing up every day, doing work, putting yourself out there, even when the success you've expected to achieve has yet to be achieved. Is understanding that as an athlete, it will never be as easy as it was when you first started. Because when you first started, again, you have that element of surprise. Nobody has seen you before. People are trying to figure you out. Now, after that first time, everybody's seen you now. Now they have an idea of who you are and what you do. Now, you're going to have to be more prepared and more focused to win than you were the first time. First time, you might be able to get by just on skill alone and ability alone. After that, every time after that, you're going to need more than that. Are you willing to do the work to get to that higher level? Are you willing to do it? Are you capable? Of course, but are you willing? Many people can win easily when they first start at something. This happens in business as well. We're going to talk about that tomorrow. But can you still win when it's not so easy anymore? Are you willing to do the work? Are you willing to go back and go through all the preparation work that got you to where you were from the beginning, even though now you got yourself a big contract, even though now you are able to take care of your family and you have money and you're not as hungry, you're not as literally hungry as you were before? Do you still have that desire to do the work and get yourself ready the way that you did before? And what I have found, having been on the inside in professional sports, the answer for a lot of athletes is no. Many athletes are not able to continue to raise their level and raise their performance and raise their focus over the course of a career simply because they don't have the same needs later in their career or even in the middle of their career that they had at the beginning. Because look, now you got paid. All right, now you got the money. Now you have made it. A lot of people thought you wouldn't make it, you made it. Now you proved them wrong. What's your desire now? What's going to get you out of bed early in the morning to go to a workout in a gym where the trainer is going to kick your ass all over that gym? Why do it now? You don't have the same needs that you had before. Your food, clothing, shelter is taken care of now. What's driving you to do it now? If you haven't figured that out, you're not going to have the same drive. You might still go to the gym, but are you going to put the same energy into your workout that you did before? A lot of athletes, you'd be surprised. There are a lot of athletes who don't do it. Now, they may, again, be gifted enough and skilled enough and have enough resources that they can still stay at the pro level and still do their thing, but they're not able to sustain the height of their game simply because they're not willing to continue doing the work. And this is just human nature. In order to go against that human nature, that once you kind of get satisfied to stay with that drive, it takes a special type of makeup. It takes a different type of approach. Now, I talk about this in my book, The Third Day. This is why we have only one LeBron. This is why we only got one Michael Jordan. This is why we only have one Roger Federer. This is why we only have one Serena Williams. Because when people get to that level, it's hard to keep wanting to be at that level because it's work that goes into it that have to go further than, all right, I don't have any money, or my parents need to be taken care of, or I just want to prove that I can do it. All right, you did all those things. Now what? If you don't have an answer, you're not going to keep doing the work. So many people can win easily early on, but they don't want to keep going through all that work. They only want to win if it's going to continue to be easy. But when you're at the pro level, it's not going to keep being easy because you're going against pros. All right, these are the best of the best, the top 1%. So people can't win again because they don't want to keep doing that grind. Some people only want the success that comes early, but the higher the level, the less likely it is that your success will ever be easy. Did I say early? I meant to say easy. The higher the level you're at, the less likely that your success will be easy. And I'll close it with one story that I heard from Roy Williams, who just recently, just this year, right, he retired as coach of University of North Carolina basketball. He also was a coach at the University of Kansas for many years. He originally came from North Carolina. He was an assistant coach, then went to Kansas, then was a head coach at UNC, and just recently retired. But Roy Williams was in the coaching game for a long time. As long as I've been alive, he's been in the coaching game. And he was an assistant coach at North Carolina when this freshman by the name of Mike Jordan came to UNC back in the early 80s. And Roy Williams said to Mr. Jordan, he said, Mike, you're going to have to work a lot harder here at North Carolina than you did when you were in high school. And Michael Jordan responded to him and said, no problem, coach, I'm going to work just as hard as everybody else. And Roy Williams responded to Mike. He said, well, Mike, do you want to be like everybody else? And it was a rhetorical question. And obviously we can tell from what happened since then that Michael Jordan had an answer to that question. Let's recap today's class, which is the third day in sports. How do you combat it? That because the first time through you may kill it because you're brand new, or in another scenario, the third day is that there are long seasons in sports and some days you just don't feel like bringing it. How can you bring it? What do you do in those situations? How do you do it the third day way? Point number one, execution. Understand that when you're at the pro level of doing what you do, maybe even at some amateur levels, people have a feel for your game. They know what you do well, they know what you don't do well, they're prepared for you. So how do you still have a good game even though they know everything you're going to try to do? And the answer is executing, meaning you know what they're going to do, they know what you're going to do, and you're still able to do your thing better than they're able to do their thing. That's what execution is about. It is not easy, and this is the reason why some athletes can only have a peak one time, but they never get back to that peak because they're not able to continue executing. Why don't people keep executing? Because of point number two. Today's the second point is preparation and defeating them in detail. First time around for an athlete in many sports, your talent and uniqueness can confound and confuse your opponents. But then once they get to study you, learn your tendencies, learn your weaknesses, now they're ready for you. What do you do then? Because you can't beat them on talent anymore. Are you willing to do the preparation work? Are you willing to do maybe parallel what a LeBron James does? Again, you might not have $1 million to spend on your body every year, but are you willing to do what you're capable of doing to make sure that you stay prepared and ready to perform on a consistent level every single day the way that the best performers do? Number 3, mental toughness. Understanding that it's never going to be as easy again as it was the first time through. Are you willing to stick with it and do the work that is required, even though it's not as easy as it was before? And that's a great question, because that applies to everything. It applies to relationships. Any of you who's in a long-term relationship, is it as easy dealing with that person now as it was at the beginning? No. And when you're playing a sport, is it as easy now? No. When you're running a business, is it as easy now as it was when you first started? No. So it's always going to be more work the further along that you go, because friction comes into play. Are you willing to do the work and deal with the grind of that friction? Many people quit when the friction comes in. Are you willing to stick with it and keep doing the work? Like Roy Williams said to Michael Jordan, do you want to be like everybody else? If not, you might have to work a little bit harder than them. Send me a text. Tell me the best insight you got from today's masterclass. My number is 305-384-6894. If you haven't yet ordered your copy of my newest book, The Third Day, the book is free. All you're going to do is cover the shipping. Just go to thirddaybook.com. The link is down below wherever you happen to be listening to this. Work on your game. Dre all day.